Welcome to Week 1, Chapter 1. We're going to look at the introduction to materials management. Through this week's lecture, I'm going to start off with a question. Wealth. What is it? Where does it come from? Does it add value in the design of the process or the managing of the process? Wealth comes from natural resources, transformation, conversion, managing the process, and services. And it all has to do with the operating environment. Again, the operating environment is controlled by government regulations and safety, as well as the economy and competition that is now global. So as you think about that and that initial question that I asked about what is wealth, where does it come from, what does it have to do with manufacturing? Well, again, we look at operating environment continued. So again, think about this. The operating environment is what's going to help us get to our answer to what wealth really is and where it comes from. So we look at customer demand, lower price to product and volume plus flexibility. We look at quality. We have order qualifiers and order winners. And remember this quote, today's order winners are tomorrow's order qualifiers. Send me an email and let me know what you think that statement means. Then we've got our manufacturing strategy, from our delivery lead time to, again, to engineer to order, make to order, assemble to order, and make to stock. We look at the engineer to order. Then we look at make to order. Can you think of a local company that fits the mold for make to order in your region, in Southwest Arkansas, or another region if you don't live in Southwest Arkansas? I can think of one. Let's look at assemble to order. So far we've looked at those two. And then finally, make to stock. Now you do have this particular slideshow that is at your disposal posted into the week 1 preparation folder. So you can go back and look at these requirements under each of those different types. But when I'm thinking of a company that comes to mind that I've had close association with, as I've done industry training with this company. I've had family members that work for this company, Brands, and it's Husqvarna Lawn Products in Nashville, Arkansas. And I believe that Husqvarna and their products fall in between those three categories, with the make to stock, the assemble to order, and the make to order. But why? Why would those things categorize Husqvarna? Let's think about that for just a moment. Well, because it's all part of the supply chain concept. When you look at the supply chain concept, you've got your physical supply, your manufacturing planning and control, and your physical distribution. But look at the dominant flow. Look at that arrow. It begins and it starts right back again. It's like a cycle. Even though it's not circling, those arrows do signify a circular motion of going back to the very beginning. When you think about that, that's the supply chain concept. What is a supply chain concept? Well, as defined on the slide, it's all activities and processes that supply a product or service to the customer. It has a link to many different companies, and it has a number of supplier-customer relationships. And we talked about that extensively in Introduction to Supply Chain. We talked about the rating systems for suppliers and companies. Also, wholesalers, warehousers, and retailers do come into play in this relationship. Historical perspective actually stems from just in time. We have our mutual analysis and mutual product design for cost reduction, greatly reduced inventory, and improved communications. Why? Because of technology. You see the growth of the supply chain concept, and global competition of supply has a lot to do with that. And we got to think about this. ERPs help companies keep up with and share information. Think about companies such as Walmart, Amazon.com, how they have ERP systems that helps them keep up with how many gross they sold of a certain product, but maybe that certain product came from a new supplier. Well, that actually brings about a whole new supply rating system for a different supplier. So again, refer back to Introduction to Supply Chain course. We kind of see the correlation of these 2 points. Sometimes you're also going to have to subcontract or outsource work because you can get the materials at a cheaper price and faster lead time. Again, with the current supply chain concept, we see these very important factors. Recover, recycle, reuse materials, especially in green supply chain today. And there are always going to be conflicts. Look at these 4 company main objectives. Then look at how the conflict is, how it's interwoven, and how the implications are for their 3 functions of marketing, production, and finance. Let's look at this following table. We see again the different objectives, and we see how it affects high or low each one of those. When you think about materials management, defined is planning and controlling the flow of materials. Simple as that. Objectives, you want to maximize the use of firm's resources and provide required level of customer service. And the company objectives, income equals revenue minus expenses, all circles back to these 4 aspects that we just saw on a couple of slides ago. Wonder what that connection is. Well, let's look at this. It's related to our profits from direct labor, direct material, and also overhead. Here is a very simple cost of goods sold formula. Look at this for a moment. Write this, take out a piece of paper and write this down and see if you come up with the same figure and the same calculation. Here's a second problem. See if you can come up with the same calculation. Here's the third question. When we talk more about manufacturing planning control, we're thinking about the flow of materials. And you've got your production planning, you've got your implementation and control, and of course your inventory management. And those are all very important functions. And when you think about it, it is a balancing act. You can see there's a trade-off. You've got your priority and your capacity that we talked about over in chapter 1. We look at customer service and as well as cost providing the service. You see it is in the balance. I want you to look at what is all involved in production planning and the activities thereof. You've got your forecasting, your master planning, your materials requirement planning or MRP, and capacity planning. In implementation and control, you're going to put into action those plans that you made. Also, it's called shop floor control. And then we've got purchasing. Inventory management supports production of raw materials or as a result of production of finished goods. And it provides a buffer against the differences in demand rates, production rates. But how much of that is actually enough? Think about that for a second. How much can that really involved. So that's why we have formulas, and that's why we calculate cost of goods and inventory turns. Inventory turns is a very simple formula. It's the inventory turn ratio is equal to the annual cost of goods sold divided by the average inventory in dollars. If you have the annual cost of goods sold at $1 million and the average inventory is $500,000, then your inventory turn is equal to that $1 million equals 2 divided over the 500 equals 2. Here's an example problem for inventory turn. Take out a piece of paper again and see if you can figure the inventory turn for A, B, and C. For extra points, email me your answers to A, B, and C. Let's look at this second inventory turns example. So we got your annual cost of CFGS, which is cost of goods sold, divided by your average inventory. So your annual CFGS, 24 over 6 equals 4. Here's a second problem. And here's another problem as well. Now we're going to look at inputs to the manufacturing planning control system. We have your product, process, and time, availability of facilities, and quantity required. When you think about the product description, these are the areas that you need to focus on. The drawings by the engineer, the specifications, and your bill of materials. This is recorded on what they call a route sheet, and this describes how the product is made, the operations, the sequence, equipment, and standard time. And is often expressed as standard time. Your available facilities also involve what equipment do you have that's available at those facilities, what labor. And this is obtained from the Work Center file, which is, these are mostly involved or contained in a company ERP system. When we look at the information for quantities required, we get that from our forecast, our customer orders, and production planning. And it's also expressed in the shop order. When we look at all the activities involved in moving goods from the supplier, we think about this, from transportation to distribution inventory, from warehousing and packaging to order entry to materials handling. Then we're going to bring in supply chain metrics. Metrics is just a verifiable measure, and it communicates your expectations, identifies problems, directs actions, motivate people. These are very straightforward concepts that don't warrant much explanation. Also, the metrics must be timely. You think about the challenges that are listed here. Take a look at those once again. Now, when we think about the metrics, there's different performance measures. They're quantified and objective, and they have to have two parameters like orders per day or sales per person. You've got your performance standards that set the goals, establish controls. And here is a great illustration of the metric. And the objectives of a metrics program. And the supply chain. And our chapter summary. So, question 2, the very first question I had, an answer to the question was, what creates wealth? Manufacturing creates wealth. And you got to make best use of your labor, your materials, and your capital. Plan your flow of materials, and pay attention to 3 elements in material flow system: your supply, your management, manufacturing, and distribution. And finally, the need to balance. And there's 3 basic ways to organize manufacturing processes. And of course, the ending thoughts, each manufacturing system requires a planning of materials.